Okay.
But did she introduce him?
No, she's going to now.
Oh, I got it.
So I'm honored to be asked to introduce my friend, Tim Tyson, as our speaker today. Tim, we're all so pleased to have you with us. I'm sure most of us know Tim through his activism with the NAACP and the Reverend Dr. William Barber, or through his books, such as Blood Done Sign My Name, Radio Free Dixie, Democracy Betrayed, or seen the movies or the play based on them. There are also a number of folks here who attended his terrific semester-long class, The South in Black and White, either as Duke or UNC students or as community members. Part of Democracy Out Loud's origin story includes a very early indivisible meeting in the neighborhood that Karen, Randa, Tim, and his wife Perry and I share. Tim was at that meeting, as we were, as well as some others on this call today. So it's especially wonderful to have you with us, Tim, today.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jewel. And if you know where Jewel lives and you know where Karen and Randa live, you know what a great neighborhood I live in. That's what, in the great city of Durham. I want to thank you to the Raging Grannies who've inspired us for so long. And it's great always to hear your voices. Like everybody else on this call, I'm obsessed with American politics, and especially as pertains to North Carolina. I saw something in the paper this morning I thought was worth mentioning. Ezra Klein's article or interview. He talked about the difference between the shift between how the Democratic Party is treating the strongman politics. And he said, that Biden had said that Trump was going to destroy American democracy, and that Walls says that Trump might ruin Thanksgiving. And I thought that it was a nice thing to remember. Especially when you're running against the kind of candidates we are. I'm especially thinking about Michelle Morrow, the Republican candidate for North Carolina Superintendent of Public Instruction, who has opined that the public schools must be destroyed. Unless we be shocked by that, I thought I would just, before we can get back to really talking amongst ourselves about what's going on, I thought I'd just give a quick historical sketch about race and public education in North Carolina over the past 150 years or so, which has a remarkable continuity. And Michelle Morrow, she might fit better in an earlier time, but the themes are much the same. As you may know, before the Civil War, white conservatives hated the very idea of public schools. They disapproved heartily. They said if you want your children to be educated, hire a teacher, form a school. Your children's education is your responsibility, and they don't need to be in some kind of state schools. Or they also, of course, the 1839 law about education and enslaved persons said that it was illegal for the enslaved to learn to read, quote, or act in any way as a preacher or teacher under penalty not to exceed 39 lashes on his bare back. In 1855, the North Carolina legislature extended that law to include free African Americans. Now, right after the Civil War, there was this unleashed this terrific hunger for education among the freed people, and schools founded daily, and really in the hundreds of schools founded in the days and weeks and months right after emancipation. But quickly, the former Confederates got back in charge, and in 1866 they made public schools illegal. To prevent integration, they hated the very idea of public education, but especially for Black children. There was a white woman named Gertrude Trappier in Raleigh, and she and some of her Black women and white women friends founded a school on Salisbury Street in defiance of the law, and operated that for the next 2 years. There were many other Black and white lawbreakers who followed suit, and it was impossible to repress public education. And then in 1868, the former Confederates were pushed out of power, and the new North Carolina Constitution was written in 1868. It's the one we still live under, with a good many amendments. But and it gave every school, every child, the right to a free and sound public education, and equal, I should say, too. And also said that no public school money can be used for any other purpose except public schools. Reverend Samuel Ashley was a white minister, and Bishop J.W. Hood, the bishop of the AME Zion Church in North Carolina, became the first superintendent and assistant superintendent of the North Carolina's first public school system, state-supported school system, in 1868. From the very beginning, this was taken up at the Constitutional Convention, and Bishop Hood said that we could not put race in the organic law of the land. And if we did that with respect to public education, that there would be separate schools and unequal schools, and they would always be unequal as long as they were separate, and so that no racial distinction should be put in the organic law, and it was not. And this is the first state-supported system of public schools in North Carolina, and I think it's the first public system of free public schools in the South, as far as I know. The public education has always been a radical idea, and it's always been embattled as well. Now, the white conservatives responded to the new Constitution and the new public schools by attempting to have private segregated schools funded by public tax dollars. This is really the whole thing. We could stop right there. In 1954, the United States Supreme Court finally caught up with Bishop J.W. Hood and ruled that separate schools would be inherently unequal, and that racial segregation has no place in the field of public education. And the North Carolina's white conservatives responded with the Pearsall Plan, which allowed for parents who did not want their child to go to an integrated school to get state money to pay for private school tuition. It also allowed the legislature to close down the whole public school system if it wanted to. White conservatives began to speak much about neighborhood schools. You may have heard this phrase. It actually came into the public school conversation in 1964 in a speech by Governor George Wallace of Alabama. The speech was entitled Civil Rights Movement, Sham, Fraud. I can't remember there was a third thing that meant the same thing. But neighborhood schools was his proposal, and this was picked up by conservatives to make the case for segregation, to the preservation of segregation, because there's segregated housing is so endemic that neighborhood schools means segregated schools for the most part. Now, there was a brilliant thing that happened in the late 1990s, mid 1990s, I guess. It started in Wake County. African-American Superintendent John, I want to say McCain. no, McNeil, excuse me, came up with a plan for schools that would be integrated socioeconomically, not racially, which was brilliant because the conservatives had been making a long, slow march through the courts to undo, to make it unconstitutional to use race as a basis for school assignments. And we're just on the verge of succeeding when, or had succeeded in some measure, when McNeil came up with this plan for socioeconomic diversity, this diversity program in Wake County. In 10 years between 1997 and 2007, Wake County doubled the percentage of African-American children who were performing at or above grade level, who passed proficiency tests in reading and math, doubled over 10 years from 40% to 80.2%, just a little over doubled proficiency scores. White students and middle-class students, their scores also went up, just not as much as poor students or Black students. So they were better for everybody, but really a lot better for impoverished families. The only 3% of the students were bused for diversity purposes, and 85% of the students attended schools 5 miles or less from their homes. All of this created a cottage industry in the research about education. Everybody wanted to do a study comparing Wake County public schools and the public schools somewhere else, where something so very different things had gone on. In fact, there was a book by Harvard University Press in 2009. I can't remember the front part of the title, but the rear part of the title was, the subtitle was Why There Are No Bad Schools in Raleigh. So if you're only judging education policy by results, it's a clear case, and not just in Wake County, but a clear case for mixed schools as providing superior outcomes for students. In 2009, the Wake County School Board was captured by a bunch of Tea Party extremists who immediately got in and immediately began to resegregate the schools under this neighborhood schools rhetoric. In 2011, at the next school board election, the NAACP and Good Schools in Wake and Yvonne Brannon, who headed that, and the women of Great Schools in Wake, who had a wonderful interracial political formation with lots of energy and brains. And we swept the Tea Party candidates out of the system and elected a whole new slate of people who really believed in public education. The ironic thing is, and I just want to make this point, but not being, I don't mean to pick on anybody, but I think we elected liberals to the school board, and they didn't really go back to the socioeconomic diversity program. They were afraid that that they wouldn't get reelected and that the school board would revert to the old control. The thing was, we had just stomped the bejesus out of them, and the central issue in the election had been this socioeconomic diversity program. So I really didn't see why everybody was so nervous. Sure, you could lose an election, but sometimes you do. You can't, over the long haul, there's no way around persuading people that you're right. You have to make the case. And, you can engage in sort of subterfuge and rhetorical dipsy-doodle for a while, but in the long run of things, you have to make the case, and there's a strong case that was failed to be made. And the schools have not been, the school board has not been lost back to the conservatives, who, if anything, have gotten nuttier. But nonetheless, the progress that was going on under the socioeconomic diversity program has not been followed. Anyway, we're still sort of running around that same maypole with regard to public education, government schools versus public schools, and I think of public schools as being really like the water supply, to be public schools have not, the value of public schools has nothing to do with the cost, and has nothing to do with whether or not you have kids in school, because it's really it's the water and the air. Public education is a matter of the very health of the body politic and the society. So anyway, we're at it again, and I hope that I'm trying to put as much as I can into Mo Green's campaign against Michelle Morrow. I think it'll go well, but he needs to be supported, and we need to get loud about that, among the other things we have to get loud about this year. And I'm about which I'm eager to hear your thoughts.
Thank you so much. Do you want to take like discussion now?
Sure.
Is that what
If
you're
anybody wants to talk about, that's fine.
Okay. I mean, was that the cue for that, Tim? Did I miss?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was wonderful.
I'd
And
rather talk with you than bray at you. Of course, that's what I'm supposed to say, but
well,
it's mostly.
We've never been shy about talking.
I'm aware of that.
uh,
What I'm doing here.
okay. I'm going to